Tonight on Newswatch, as the president talks jobs and the economy 5 years after the big stimulus, what really matters to the average American family.
Plus, a troubling trend among the nation's military and how it's hurting soldiers, their families, and the country.
And it's one of the largest concert tours in the nation, featuring top Christian artists. A look behind the scenes at Winter Jam and how it's transforming lives. All this and more tonight on Newswatch. Jobs and your paycheck. Are things looking up for America's economy? Good evening. I'm Mark Martin.
And I'm Heather Sells. There appears to be a huge disconnect between what the president is saying about the economy and what Americans are experiencing. That divide surfaced again this week as the Obama administration praised the 2009 stimulus, also known as the Recovery Act. The Obama administration is celebrating the 5-year anniversary of its 2009 stimulus program. A self-congratulatory report out this week explains considerable evidence suggests the federal government's efforts to jumpstart the economy were successful. Businesses and households are now in far better shape as a result. But ironically, also out this week, a new Gallup poll in which Americans say their biggest concern is jobs and unemployment. 25% of Democrats and Republicans agree it's the biggest problem. Their second biggest concern, the economy.
And so I think the American people are a little bit ahead of the president on this one, and they're worried.
Forbes contributor and venture capitalist Bill Frezza says jobs and the economy should be the biggest concern for Americans.
Look at all their neighbors that are out of work. Look at the fact that take-home pay is declining in America. Look at the fact that there's an enormous amount of uncertainty on the horizon in terms of where they're going to get their health care and what it's going to cost. Their employees are nervous as well. So with everybody nervous, it's hard for the average American to be sanguine about the economy and believe any of the numbers coming out of Washington.
Last fall, during the government shutdown, Gallup showed that Americans were most worried about the government and politicians. But before that, going back to February 2008, Americans have said that either jobs or the economy were the most important problems. This consistent worry is, of course, unlikely to be eased by the president's latest report. And there's already talk that the GOP plans to use economy concerns as a major midterm election weapon.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un is implicated in crimes against humanity committed in the world's most secretive nation. A United Nations panel issued a report listing atrocities, including systematic execution, torture, rape, and mass starvation. In 2011, CBN's George Thomas spoke with the panel's chief witness against the state.
For 28 years, Kim Ye-suk was a prisoner inside North Korea's oldest concentration camp. In late 2011, soon after her miraculous escape from the communist country, Kim gave CBN News the first Western television news interview. How many members of your family were killed in the labor camp?
7. I lost 7 members, including my grandmother, mother, brother, and my husband.
More than 80 witnesses were interviewed for the UN's year-long investigation. One of their leading witnesses was Kim Ye-suk. You saw public executions. You saw people get killed inside the camp.
Yes, I witnessed countless public executions. And often these prisoners were killed over petty things like stealing food. The guards would always gather other prisoners to watch the execution. It was a form of intimidation.
Rape, murder, torture, slavery, sexual violence, forced abortions, just a few of the words found in the 374-page report that the UN says amount to crimes against humanity.
The Commission of Inquiry has unanimously come to the conclusion that there is abundant evidence of great wrongs of this kind.
Kim told investigators that food was in short supply, that fellow prisoners killed their own children to stave off hunger.
One time, a mother put her 9-year-old daughter in this big cast iron pot and boiled her. She was too big for the pot, so the mother had to chop her legs and head to feed the body in the pot.
The report estimates that between 80,000 and 120,000 political prisoners are still held in prison camps. Jung Yong Kang was one of them. He told CBN News that before being released, he was severely tortured for alleged spying activities. While he was in the Yodok labor camp, Mr. Kang says the prison guards performed a particularly harsh procedure on him. It's called the pigeon torture. In essence, the prisoner is held from the wall with his hands tied behind his back, and he's put in this position for days on end.
This happened repeatedly. It's like you're hanging upside down. Your muscles tense up and your chest sticks out like a bird. I thought I was going to die.
An estimated 30,000 Christians are also reportedly being held in prison for their faith, owning a Bible, praying, worshiping. These are all acts that can put up to 3 generations of a family in jail. The UN is expected to submit their findings to the International Criminal Court with potential charges against the regime's leadership. North Korea has dismissed the report, saying, quote, "It is nothing more than an instrument of political plot aimed at sabotaging the socialist system." George Thomas, CBN News.
And George Thomas joins us now. George, this is a very significant document, isn't it?
It absolutely is, Mark. I mean, look, the United Nations spent a year in investigating this. It documented, it interviewed 320 witnesses. Many of them were North Korean defectors. And the very fact, Mark, for the very first time that we have the words crime against humanity and North Korea on the same line, that is very significant.
Well, where does everything go from here? I mean, is it likely that the International Criminal Court will take up the case?
One word, no.
Why not?
Why? Because in order for this case to go before the International Criminal Court, it has to go through the Security Council. And there are 2 countries that hold a very, very powerful role in the Security Council, China and Russia. Today, China called this UN report, quote, unreasonable criticism. That indicates not just to Russia, but to the other security members that this is not going to go any further, which is a disappointment. Yet, many folks that I've spoken to over the last year say at least it is the foundation. It creates a foundation for maybe future years, in the years to come, that there is evidence when the time comes that there will be a case brought before the International Criminal Court that lays out in specific the atrocities that have been taking place under the tutelage of this horrific government.
You've done several stories on North Korea. Yeah. Is this encouraging to you that this is coming out?
It is, but look, people are frustrated. What do we do now? The question we had in the newsroom today was, what do we do now? And that's the thing, the emphasis and the pressure needs to continue to bear on North Korea for these very facts.
Okay, our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. George, as always, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
At least 13 people are dead and more than 100 injured as clashes erupt in Ukraine. It was the worst violence there in weeks. Anti-government protesters marched on the Ukrainian parliament demanding constitutional reforms. Protesters were met by police who used rubber bullets, stun grenades, tear gas, and batons to hold surging crowds back. Since last November, tens of thousands of Ukrainians have taken to the streets demanding the resignation of their president. And meanwhile, in South America, another nation in turmoil right now, Venezuela's government is cracking down on protesters angry with President Nicolas Maduro. For the past 2 weeks, thousands have filled the streets there protesting rising crime, soaring inflation, and food shortages. The regime has responded by arresting main opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez, and Monday, President Maduro expelled 3 U.S. diplomats, accusing them of conspiring with the opposition to topple his government. The U.S. says the allegations are, quote, baseless and false.
6 world powers are meeting in Vienna with Iranian officials today. It's the next stage in Iran nuclear negotiations, but many are doubtful the talks will be successful, including in Israel. Here's Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem.
The talks will bring Iran together with the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. Their goal is to finalize a deal reached last November in Geneva. Under that 6-month accord, Iran agreed to cap its nuclear program in return to limited sanctions relief by the West. Here in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a meeting of American Jewish leaders the interim deal has slowed Iran's nuclear program by only 4 weeks.
That's what Iran has given to the world, which means it's given practically nothing. But Iran has received a great deal. It's received the easing of sanctions. It's given 4 weeks. But it's receiving a new position in the world. It's being legitimized.
Netanyahu warned Iran's new centrifuges are 50 times faster than their old ones, and that Iran is developing ICBMs with one goal in mind.
By the way, the range is geared to Europe and soon to the United States. It's not for us. And there's only one purpose in the world to develop ICBMs. You develop an ICBMs in order to deliver a nuclear payload.
This is not a country that our government can trust.
Former Governor Mike Huckabee told CBN News current U.S. policy toward Iran is naive.
I'm amazed of the naivete of the Obama administration when it comes to Iran. The Iranians are laughing up their sleeves, they're dancing in the streets because they're getting everything they want. Once again, this country that is not being held accountable, not only for their actions in trying to accelerate toward nuclear weaponization, but they're virtually being rewarded for the hateful, not just anti-Semitic, but anti-human rhetoric that they have tossed to not just Israel, but to the United States.
The talks in Vienna are expected to last for 3 days. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Back home, it's been another day of winter misery for millions of Americans. The skies dumped an extra 2 to 8 inches of fresh snow from Detroit all the way to New York City. Some areas are also seeing rain and sleet, all of it complicating evening commutes. Snowbanks are taller than cars in some parts of Chicago, thanks to all the snow there. Forecasters do have good news for the winter weary, though. Warmer weather is expected over the next couple of days.
Severe turbulence jolted travelers Monday on a United Airlines flight from Denver to Billings, Montana. A sudden drop as the plane was about to descend put 5 people in the hospital, including 3 crew members. One passenger saw an infant fly from a mother's arms and land in another seat, scared but unharmed.
Felt like something came up from the bottom and hit the bottom of the plane.
And then stuff and people were flying all over the place.
The man in front of me flew up out of his seat and actually hit the ceiling.
Wow. 4 of the 5 people hospitalized in Billings have been released. One flight attendant, however, remains in critical condition. Coming up, military misconduct on the rise, what it says about our nation and what can be done about it.
Soaring numbers of soldiers are being forced out of the Army for misconduct. Thousands of enlisted soldiers were kicked out last year over drugs, alcohol, crimes, and other violations. The number shot up from about 5,600 at the height of the Iraq War in 2007 to more than 11,000 last year. And the number of officers forced out more than tripled in the past 3 years. Up from 119 officers back in 2010 to 387 last year. And it comes as the military cleans house after a decade of war. Observers say war might have led the Pentagon to focus more on competence than character in order to meet troop demands. Well, revelations of the spike in misconduct come at the same time as an increasing crackdown on religious liberty in the military. The Family Research Council is tracking that. Retired General Jerry Boykin with the FRC joins us now with insight on the issue. And General, do you see any connection between this rising misconduct and the increasing hostility against faith in the military?
I don't think there's any question about that. Remember that our military is really a reflection of our society. And you also need to understand that this administration, since 2008, has entered into a series of social experiments, social engineering, nothing to do with readiness, but everything to do with pushing the agenda, which I believe has had a direct correlation to the misconduct that you see today. As you see the declining morals in America, you see exactly the same thing in our military. And it all comes back to the what I think is a concerted effort to deprive the young men and women today that are serving from their constitutional liberties of freedom of religion.
So explain a little more how that plays out. If you have religious hostility in the military, how does that then lead to more misconduct in your view?
Well, every member of the military has an opportunity, theoretically, to decide what their own moral values are. But when they come into the military, there are certain moral standards that are expected of them. Now, when you have an environment where religion is not only protected but promoted, history shows that you certainly have a much more moral climate with fewer problems like we're seeing today. But what you have in our military today in all the services, this is not just the Army, is you have a situation where there is an effort underway to punish people that are very open about their faith. And we can give you chapter and verse from our research at the Family Research Council about how Christians especially are being persecuted in our military today for standing for their faith. And what you have then is you have Christians walking out of the military, and the climate continues to decline.
Let me just cut in there for a minute. We just have a short time left. At this point going forward, what do you think is going to happen, and how can we encourage greater character in our military?
Well, first of all, we need to put extreme pressure on the Department of Defense to ensure that we protect the religious liberties inside our military. And there are many groups that are working on that right now.
All right, General Boykin, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
In other news, a former nurse at a Planned Parenthood facility in Indianapolis calls the place evil. Marianne Anderson worked at Indiana's largest provider of abortions. She told a Catholic newspaper she was on the fence about abortion when she first started working there, but later changed her mind. She says they had a chant saying, quote, abortion all the time. Anderson describes it as a money-grubbing, evil, very sad, sad place to work. And she remembers difficulties she experienced, including dealing with women who had terrible reactions to their abortions. And you can find a link to the interview on CBNNews.com. No more Bibles in Iowa State University hotels. They are being removed, according to the Des Moines Register, after a guest complained about them to the Freedom From Religion Foundation. The atheist group asked the university to take the Bibles out of the rooms. It argued that providing Bibles to guests, quote, facilitates illegal endorsement of Christianity over other religions and over non-religion. The Bibles were moved to the campus library for lending.
And up next, Winter Jam heats up venues across the nation. How this Christian concert tour is making a difference coast to coast.
Winter Jam is one of the largest concert festivals in the nation. Filled with headliner Christian music acts, it draws sellout crowds across the country. And our newest reporter, Angela Zatopek, attended the music festival, and she is here now, and she attended it in our area. And tell us about this. I guess this has really become a musical, phenomenal event, right?
Oh my gosh. So the founders are New Song, and this started about 19 years ago, and they just had a groundbreaking night in Atlanta with 30,000 people. And this past Sunday, they had to turn away 3,000 people.
Wow.
Because so many people are just so on fire for this.
And that was here in Norfolk, Virginia.
Yes, here right here in Virginia Beach. So the unique thing about this is that it's $10. No tickets required, and 10 of the top Christian artists. It features Lecrae, a ton of different artists that draw the youth and adults. And I got the chance to talk to the tour speaker, Nick Hall, and he talks about how those who are exploring faith and have questions, they're really using technology to help people get connected with the answers.
One thing that we encourage people to do here, and people can do back home, is they can pull out their cell phone, and actually every night I do this, but people at home can do this right now too. If you text in the word reset to the number 73738, that will send you a text message back, and it'll get you connected with some encouragement and some tips. And actually, we have a team of people across the country to help people if you need a church, or even if you need to talk to someone. Literally, there's somebody available all the time.
Wow,
to message
that's
back
incredible.
And forth and have spiritual conversations.
Right now, they're halfway through the tour, and there are 26 cities left. They've got some great foundations lined up in Cincinnati, Houston, and even Nashville. So you can find out about that lineup on our website at cbnnews.com.
Cincinnati is my hometown. Good to see that Winter Jam is heading there.
Awesome.
Well, the atmosphere must have been incredible. I know I took my daughter to see it last year. Loved it. I'm sure it was the same way this year. Did you see God at work? Talk about that.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. You know, everyone was just standing up. I even saw a group of nuns with their hands in the air to Lecrae. So, you know, it was a hit.
That's right. If you see nuns doing hip hop, you know there's some good things going on.
Absolutely.
All right, great, Angela. Welcome aboard, and we look forward to you reporting on the lighter side of Christian news and entertainment.
Thank you.
All right, Heather.
For being here.
Well, the Newsboys are part of the Winter Jam tour, and they visited CBN News yesterday, and our Charlene Israel got to talk with them. She asked them about the huge success of their hit, which is God's Not Dead.
We were most shocked by how many young people.
Kids love that song, and we don't
We
really
figured it
know
out.
why.
Yeah.
But there's something about that song. Maybe it's the roaring
The
like a
lion.
lion thing, maybe, but across the board, it's kids 5 years and up. I mean, obviously, mum and dad do. They just resonate with something in that song. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Charlene talked with the guys about a lot of things. You can see the whole interview on our CBN News Facebook page, and we'll be right back.
Finally tonight, a three-point shot during halftime at a college basketball game is going viral.
The reason the impeccable shot was made by a very special champion, 54-year-old Michael Quinn, is a blind and mentally impaired man from Springfield, Missouri, who doesn't allow his disabilities to get the best of him. And his three-point shot during a College of the Ozarks game proved that.
I like basketball so much. If I do my best, then everything else will be okay.
Practices three-point shots using the voice of someone standing below the basket to guide him to it. And he's part of Champion Athletes of the Ozarks, which helps people with disabilities participate in sports. So great technique there.
Yeah, and what a great way to end the newscast. Thanks for watching.